Hello and welcome to I'm Alice podcast, and we're talking about connection, creativity, and how we find clarity through our ever-changing world that we live in. So we're talking about transformation and change. So welcome to this edition of I'm Alice podcast. I hope you enjoy it. So, welcome, Millie, to I'm Alice podcast, where I talk about connection, creativity, and finding clarity in this ever-changing world we live in. So, welcome. And if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell everyone about you a bit, then we can get into the podcast.
Yeah, so hi there, my name's Milli Moonstone. I'm many things, but I call myself a psychedelic facilitator, musician, and coach. I work primarily with guiding people through deep dive transformational journeys with ayahuasca, starting soon to be with psilocybin. I work also with Tantra. So in Costa Rica, I lead Tantrahuasca. That's a retreat for women with Tantra and ayahuasca. And I'm here in Brazil. I run a retreat center here in the rainforest in Brazil, 3 hours from Rio. We're in the middle of an ayahuasca retreat right now, in fact. So there's a group here. And yeah, and I'm a musician. And really for all my adult life, really, but for many years, my focus has been how to create healing shamanic journeys where through music also and through medicine and also through tantra and sacred sexuality and connecting into our life force energy, you're talking about creativity, how we can connect into our own medicine. I create and offer spaces really for each one to be able to connect into the medicine that they hold within, which ultimately is our divine essence, is our core, is our own unique life force energy, and to get to know self, to get to come into that deep communion within where people can know themselves as their authentic selves, and from there naturally effortlessly overflow in abundance of that out into the world and share their gifts, share their offerings. So that's kind of my focus, and I do that through music, through plant medicine, through sexual medicine. I have a project, Awaken Your Medicine, that's all about creating spaces, tools, platforms, courses, teachings for each one to awaken their own medicine.
So, personal transformation, full on.
It's my life.
Taking the time to do that too, isn't it? Through these, new plant medicines. I guess they're not new, but I mean, they're becoming more and more popular these days. A lot of people do that here as well, but I haven't actually ventured there yet, as I said earlier. But like you said about creativity and how creativity is so important in our lives. And I think it's actually becoming more and more important because it really deeply connects us to our authentic self, into connection to the divine, and to really living our best lives. And also through when we have these really deep personal transformations, it can help support and guide us. And that's what we really need. So we can expand instead of contract. As we were saying earlier about, grief and how, how to transform grief. Because in Western society, we're very much, we don't really tackle it very well. It's very sort of medicalized, and it's not a holistic way of leaving our bodies and going into the afterlife, and still obviously we can still connect with our souls of our family and friends. So I think it's really important about how we can use creativity to get us through these times of grief. And I don't know about you, but I know quite a lot of people that have been leaving the planet. And it's like finding new ways of dealing with our grief and using it for our personal transformation. So instead of being at sort of end of our lives that we're like, oh my God, life's ruined now because this person's out of my life, or this hasn't gone wrong, or life hasn't come out how I wanted it to be, but actually as a growth and a personal transformation where we can still grow and find a new mission, a new life, and expand our consciousness. Yeah. So I don't know if you want to talk about your personal transformation. you know, your grief and how it changed you, and what tools that you found that could support you. I mean, often we have some tools with us already that we can use, if we're lucky enough that we've done personal work and we've done personal transformation. But often, like say for the wide majority, I'd say it's still a very difficult subject to talk about, and difficult way of actually how we process it. So I'd love to hear about how you process your, you know, your grief and the loss of your partner, and how you can inspire others to find a different way of accepting, processing, honoring ourselves and them through these really difficult, but, you know, also transformational times for us.
Wow. There is so much to share there. And as you were speaking, there were so many things that, oh, I want to come to that, I want to come to that, and I'll flow and see where we go with it. But for sure, I very much agree with you. And I see, like, I look in the world and the way that our culture processes grief or doesn't process grief, basically. Like our paradigm, we're both English women, right? Our paradigm has been keep calm and carry on. We come from a few decades ago that it was repress everything and just get on with life and put it all aside. And we're seeing now, like, those that are at the cutting edge of therapy, of somatic work, are really realizing how actually this creates disease within us, right? Repressed emotion, stored emotion. It's like, I like to kind of liken it to the champagne bottle. The more bubbles, like if you liken the bubbles to the emotions and the grief and the rage and all these things that we don't allow ourselves to express, it's like this, and we have this bottleneck, and we create this bottleneck either in our throats or in our jaws or in our tongues or in our breath, which mean that we stop breathing, or we contract in the throat, and the physical body actually shuts down to create this contraction to keep the emotion and that energy within, because emotion is just energy that just wants to flow. And so this is the crux of it, really, is that our culture has come from a place of not allowing it to flow. It's repressing, it's keeping it in, and that creates this explosion, and then we can lash out, or then it can come out into unhealthy, abusive, violent ways of expressing that, because it's not just given a safe, conscious space to release and to feel and to be with that energy when it's there. And then we're kind of in a way going into another paradigm now where it's like, I'm an individual and I can do what I want, and I'm angry, so I can be angry at you, and I can, you know, I have my right, I have my individuality. That's another stage. It's like, you know, Nietzsche's model, and Nietzsche had a model of the camel, the lion, and the child. And like the camel is the beast of burden that carries the weight of others, or that is in that repression, it's in the shutdown of the emotion. And then the lion is like, I'm the individual, roar, I can roar if I want. And then the next stage of evolution is that we come into the place of innocence of the child, of just naturally feeling our feelings when they arise, processing them in a healthy way, being with them, and responding in the moment in a way that's healthy, beneficial for ourselves and for the others. But at the same time, it's not repressing anything. It's just allowing the emotion to be expressed. And so I feel that's the kind of the paradigm that I want to help usher people into, because this is a way that is the most healthy for ourselves and for others, and for the amount of conflict and issues that we have on this planet, to really learn how to deal with the emotions in a safe way. And we're not given the tools to do that, but we can all learn the tools, right? So it's like, I like to liken it to also a baby. A baby regulates with the mother being the bigger body, the larger body that can receive the vibrations of the fear or the pain or whatever it is, and help soothe the nervous system of the baby, because it's that bigger body. And Mother Earth can do that for us, being the bigger body. And a safe, conscious space can do that for us. So this is why also I do the work that I do, because it's offering safe, conscious spaces where people can go into trauma, wounding places, where grief, where challenging emotions have been stored. They haven't been allowed to be expressed at the time, or we didn't have the tools to express them at the time. Like in many cases, a lot of trauma that comes from childhood, when we had to just behave in a certain way, and so we learned to repress it and keep it all inside, or again explode and deal with it in an unhealthy, destructive way. So it's really about learning how to feel them, feel emotions and process them and digest them so that they can no longer have to subconsciously sabotage us. And so you actually asked about my personal process. Like I met who was the love of my life 12 years ago, 2012, and we had 7 incredible years together, like full love, absolute totality. When we met, it was a sense of this spiritual love. It wasn't a kind of an attraction-based love. It was this pure spiritual, divine, dharmic love. And we lived 100 ceremonies. We offered 100 ceremonies together a year for 7 years. We were traveling the world, leading ayahuasca retreats. And we had this very powerful Dharma together and this very beautiful spiritual love. And people that saw us were like, wow, you give me like inspiration of what love can be and what partnership can be, like in mutual respect, love, totality, each one lifting the other up. And then he passed away, the start of COVID, 2020. And yeah, 12 years when we got together, I was imagining, thinking, how could I ever live without him? Like, I loved him so much. How could I ever survive without him? And then we did 700 ceremonies together, and I grew so much as a person. And really, through my own personal journey with ayahuasca, I very much learned all of this, what I've been talking about, how to feel, process emotions, go into emotion, and ride the wave without identifying it, without attaching it to it, just allow the emotion to flow through, hold space for myself, have space held for me to ride that wave as well. And so by the time he passed, I actually feel that I very much, even though I probably went through one of the most painful things that human can go through, right? One of like the most challenging things, to lose the person that we want to spend every day of our life with. And yet I feel like I managed to process it in a really good way. 4 years on, I've created so much in my life. I feel really whole, complete. Of course I miss him. My heart misses him so much. Like, I love him so much. And I've very much alchemized the grief, the pain, and I'm full living my mission and full living my purpose. And I've very much like, okay, we can let something crushing like that really crush, like we can let it crush us.
Mm-hmm.
Or we could say what you were talking about, that's, okay, this has happened. Am I going to resist it? Am I going to fight it? Am I going to hold on? Am I going to clench around that and what was and stay in the past and the bitterness and the victim identity? Or am I going to relax and open and surrender and like, okay, this is what life gave me. Life gave him to me. Life took him away. I, little human self, can't cling on to anything. It's like I have to, for my own most optimal way of living, it's finding that way of being where I can surrender and trust in life, that what is happening for me. And can I find the lessons in it? Can I find the gold in it? And can I use that, what I've been through, as a way to root even more deeply into myself, into my own heart, into my own core, into my own purpose? And can I use that also to offer something of value to others as well? Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, you were given the tools, through all these ceremonies and what you were doing to help others and yourself, to grow and to really deeply find yourself. In doing that, you were able to hold yourself and take yourself through those processes for your grief, which you're probably the most equipped person that I know that, and you needed to be, because he was so important to you, so important that I'm sure you found lots of ways to honor him by also continuing the work that you did together. And what other ways do you find that you could honor him and honor your own self through, I mean, I guess through all the processes, the ceremonies that you do, but were there other ways of, the ways that you could to honor him and honor your grief?
Yeah, interesting question. Really being honest and authentic with myself. Yeah. Giving the space to feel what's there to be felt. And validating it for myself. Comes one story to mind. I was just walking down the street with my parents and a wave of grief came and I just burst into tears, and I could just give myself the freedom to it's okay. I'm just walking down the street, the middle of the high street, and I'm just going to allow the tears to flow. Yeah, and giving that space, creating that safe space for myself wherever I am. Also knowing that sometimes it's not the appropriate space, and then I can create a sacred space for myself later to allow the emotion to move, to dance, to be in my creative practices, movement, music, meditation, to really give the space to feel either in the moment when it comes or through creating a sacred space to connect to that at another time. And also what comes to mind, like, I mean, obviously very much the work that I'm doing, like he comes from the Santo Daime lineage. So we offered a branch, like a new way of working with ayahuasca, but I'm honoring his work, his lineage, by carrying the torch of that, by continuing these works, by continuing this place, investing my own energy, not out of obligation to him or to his work, but because that feels like it is my mission. And I choose to step into that. I love it. I see how fulfilling it is, how beneficial it is. So in practical ways, continuing his legacy, continuing his work, continuing this land here that we poured so much blood, sweat, and tears into to build for people to be able to come and receive this deep healing. And in creating spaces to honor him as well, and on certain dates, of course, to like come together in community and to remember him. And I'd like to create a book actually of the kind of collective wisdom of inspiration, because there's many thousand. He was a spiritual teacher really for many thousands of people. So to create a book of sharings of wisdom from him. Also, another thing that came to mind was sexuality. Like this was a kind of a big thing that after he passed, I felt this vast eruption of sexual energy. And I received quite some judgment for that. Like, and I, a few weeks later, was with somebody that was a deep part of my healing process when I was in the biggest grief, to be held. And when I'd been so close to death for those many months, and like it was just death, grief, blackness, darkness, let go, loss of dreams, so many dreams, not just him, but the family, the life path that we'd envisioned together. So much, potentially even this place. I thought I was going to lose this land as well. I thought I was going to have to like leave and go back to England. So there's a lot of loss. And then actually sexual energy is life force energy. This creative energy is that connection to the spark of our own life again. So I had an intimate relationship with someone, what many people would judge as being far too soon afterwards. And just like the fact that I can speak this to you and be like, yes, actually sexual energy was a very profound way of bringing me back to life after I'd been so close to death. And so I really feel like that was also an honoring of him, an honoring of myself, an honoring of the energy that was there, an honoring of my own natural process and my own actual need to be held by a man in all my grief, and also to receive like that feel like connection to my body again, and connection to some level of joy and of pleasure and of aliveness when it had just been so much death around me. So that was a very valuable part that I bring it up here also because I think it's very topical, and I think that there are many widows and widowers who go through a similar thing, and then they receive a lot of judgment, and they receive like, even within themselves, they're like, oh, am I betraying my partner? No, you're not, because the space, like the love in your heart that you have for your partner, that's as big as it ever was. And that love and that honoring and that connection to them is there. And that doesn't get lost that gets lost if you close your heart to that story. You close your heart and like, right, I'm going to shut down and I'm not going to honor that within me. But if you can stay open to the love and the closeness and the intimacy that you had for your beloved, and you can acknowledge that they're not here anymore. And I'm still alive. And actually my commitment to me and to them is to live my life as fully as I can while I'm here in this body. Like to make the most of this life in whatever feels true. And it may be that whatever is true is also like the trauma response and the wound response, and like, okay, well, I'm devastated and I'm in grief and I act out of that. And it's also then a whole other conversation of how to really root into like the deep ways so that we're not necessarily doing things that we regret later or that are actually damaging us or throwing ourselves into kind of, you know, energy, opening our energies and our bodies to someone that's then actually we're oh, that wasn't really okay. I see I did that out of grief, and that's okay. That's part of the process as well. But to really honor ourselves in the process that we're going through, and to do that work to root as deeply into as we can into the truth of who we are, the depths of who we are, and validate for that for ourselves and hold space for ourselves through that.
I mean, it's always a unique experience. You know, whatever we go through, it's unique. And we have to do whatever we have to do to get through and to stay alive and to find meaning again and to find purpose and to feel the feelings and to do whatever we need to do. I mean, yes, of course, sometimes it's not ideal. Maybe looking backwards, I'm just looking at my own story, but you know, things happen, and it's that fight for and that determination to come through something that's very, well, I mean, let's say it's tragic. It's completely tragic.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I told her a little bit about my story about when I suddenly lost my husband. Obviously, he didn't die, but he changed his mind about wanting to be married to me and to have these adopted children that we'd gone through a whole 2-year process to adopt. And it's a very grueling process, and it really questions every element of you if you're good enough. That was a particular one. You know, if you're good enough to adopt these children, and why, and you know, and you really are scrutinized, and then to lose them so suddenly, you know, it took me on a very deep journey, you know, a spiritual journey. You know, a spirit came, spirits, you know, good spirits, to support me, and but you know, in the Western world, that's not normal, and so I ended up going into you know, a psychiatric ward, sectioned in a hospital for 28 days. Luckily, I did get out earlier. But you know, this whole, how it creates this turmoil. And what I noticed for myself, and obviously I was in the UK at the time, you know, just a normal person having an experience, is that there wasn't any space holding, and I didn't really get to learn about holding space until I moved to Bali. And I really didn't have a concept of that actually somebody could hold space for me, and what that meant, and to have safety in itself, you know, because I'm sure a lot of people going through a loss of a partner or a loss of their life they thought they were going to have, no, there is no safe space. The only safe space is to you know, is to go to the medical profession, and that's usually you know, that's usually drugs and pharmaceuticals and you know, mental health, or you know, if you're not normal, having some kind of spiritual awakening, then you know, they put you in a place where you're deemed safe, and it's not a very safe place to be at all, in my understanding. And then to be drugged and, you know, put into a small room and to have that sort of chaos. Yeah, so when we go through these really difficult times, you know, like I was saying, losing my family, losing the life I thought I was going to have, there's a lot of shame around it already, in public humiliation, and what people are thinking about you and their grief and your grief and everyone's reactions. And then obviously for me, obviously I went into a psychiatric unit after having sort of 3 weeks of not sleeping and talking to spirit and not being normal. But actually it was very normal experience to have some very deep experience of loss and grief, to then be forced to connect with your higher, or the divine, or whatever you want to call it, your higher self, the divine, your spirit guides, you know, all of these elements to save you, to help you get through. And you know, I was told during mine, like I think it was the second day, that there's a gift in your experience. And so that's what I held on to. I was like, okay, I can get through this. I'm a strong person. I can do this. And there's a gift in my experience. Okay, well, I'm holding out for that, and I trust, and but it was just too much. I mean, because I was woken up in bed, so I wasn't even fully awake and fully conscious when I received the news. So it was too much. And I understand that, and that happens to some people. So obviously in the UK, that's what happens to you. Go to psychiatric ward and you get drugged, and that experience happens. But then after that, and coming out and having even more shame from being locked up, and now I'm not a safe person, or and all of this, and not having any space held, and not actually being offered any counseling, even though I asked them, and all these things. It's just like that's an example, a quite extreme example, I guess, but that's an example, and actually it is quite common for people. I've come across other people that I've supported through this, and so it's like you're showing another way that the space can be held. It's all normal. And I mean, I'll just say one thing. I did have some sort of counseling, and she said I had a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. And I just thought, it's funny how no one noticed that at the time, though. I mean, I'm getting signed into a psychiatric, and I was like, these 3 doctors just decide, and I was like, I'm suffering from grief. I mean, I knew, I mean, when you have a spiritual awakening, or you're talking to your guides, like, what is going on, and to not be listened to and heard and seen, and just drugged and put in a very chaotic environment, which was actually quite physically threatening, and all the domino effect that happened from that experience, which turned my life even into another. It's like being in a movie, turned it into more drama. And then till eventually I get myself through a process of, sort of holistic health, and then have that dream, holding that dream to go traveling again, to find a new life. Obviously, I didn't tell anyone about it, but, that was my dream. It's like, right, when I get better, I'm going to go and travel. I'm going to see the beauty in the world, and I'm going to find a whole new life, and thankfully I came to Bali, and I did. But that's maybe not so common, I don't know. But I mean, talking about for what you can do for people and how you can create that safe space. I'm sure, just one other thing I want to say, when you have something very traumatic happen to you, or loss, grief, then actually it can bring up everything in your life. I mean, that's what I felt I had. Everything came through. All the other losses, all the other elements of grief, and all of everything just tumbled through. So I'm sure you must have met people like this that have come to your retreat to, thinking they're trying to sort out one thing, but actually it's everything. It's all the lineage, your parental programming, your grandparents, it's all coming through to be, reformed. So I don't know if you can speak to a bit about how you can support people through that in the work that you do.
Yeah, I mean, it moves so much inside me as I hear you sharing, and that you had to have, in a way, this experience, and that many people in our culture don't know there's another way. And yet, all respect to the medical system for what they do at certain times, and with regards to mental health, it's lacking so much. Like, our culture is lacking so much, and actually the whole, right, go into what you're needing in those places is to root more deeply into yourself. No, when we have this, like what you had actually in tribal cultures would be not a psychiatric thing, it would be a spiritual emergency. It would be like, wow, you're having this vast existential spiritual opening.
Yeah.
And in our culture, we come from the, like, the neurotic women that we have to lock up, and they're crazy. Of course they're crazy, like crazy in that sense, because they've absolutely been repressed of their own life force energy. And so they're trying to live something that the more disconnected, like, we as a culture get from our own root, the core of our own being, our own connection to God, if you want to call it God, to existence, to love, to something far beyond us, that we all are absolutely, we're all this interlaced web of energy that is existence. And when we realize and experience ourselves at those deeper levels of realizing that sense of connection, we know we're held, we know we're loved, we know we're supported. And And so actually, when we have these kind of experiences of grief or of these spiritual emergencies and things, actually, like, what we need is to root more deeply into us. And also why I offer this work is not just to address the big traumas or the emergencies or something like this. It's actually because as we do that in our everyday life, as that becomes this rooting into ourselves becomes more a part of who we are, how we live our life, how we experience ourselves. Then when challenging situations come along, we have that root, right? What I shared, like that, then I feel that the 7 years of being in ceremony and learning how to ride waves of emotion, learning how to hold space for myself, learning how to really just be present with what is, that is what trained me a lot in a way to then be able to deal with that vast experience of loss. So it didn't need to throw me off in that way. Whereas if I hadn't had that anchor of all that experience, then it could have gone into maybe something a bit more like your experience or many people's experience. And then it's like, okay, you go to the psychiatric hospital, you're given drugs, you're put in a place with a lot of other people acting very strangely. You're in some sterile hospital room. You're in potentially threatening, as you mentioned, threatening or not really respectful physical conditions as well. So it's like all of this actually disconnects you more from yourself. Drugs, like, they numb you out. Like, I kind of have an issue with psychiatric drugs as well, because they numb you out. So great, you don't have to feel the pain, but then actually it's disconnecting you even more from yourself. And actually, what if it was like, okay, instead of doing all these things to kind of disconnect, to create some kind of facade of like the sugar-coated, yes, we're in a safe space, actually you're getting more and more disconnected from who you truly are. And actually go in and create the spaces and teach people the tools so that they can do that and have that sense of community, right? And this is another big one, is like in our individualistic culture, it's like, you know, many people don't have anyone to go to. Their loved ones and their friends and their family don't know how to hold space for you in the levels of grief that you are. So you can end up feeling very alone. And then the only way is to go to a psychiatric hospital, which is just disconnecting you more. And if you have that community, you have people that are experienced on this pathway of holding space, of being with what is, of allowing the emotions to be there and allowing them to flow through and not attach and identify them. But
and the connection to nature.
And nature.
Because, you know, I was in a high-rise building when I was allowed to go out for 2 hours a day if someone came to visit me, so I could actually get out, and I would pick up leaves in the park. I mean, I just was like longing to see nature and to connect with, with just nature, with the earth. But obviously, I didn't get to do that. But I feel like from my experience, I was supposed to have just a little experience of something, so then I could share it with others and have, when we have our own experience, then, that is the truth. That is our truth. And, we can share that with others to help inform about maybe this isn't the right way to treat people. Maybe this isn't the right way to treat grief, and maybe we can change that, slowly, or maybe fast, who knows. But yeah, we can change that, and there's another avenue, there's another way of dealing with it. So also, like, say recently, a friend has passed away, a very important family friend that supported me in my book and supported me, through my spiritual awakening, took me to his house, and I lived with him for a week before things happened. And so it's like another level. So there's a new grief in my life. So obviously it's not as big as what happened then, but it's like, now I'm looking at finding new ways to deal with that. Like I said, when we have grief, it brings up all other grief, it brings up all other losses. We feel the pain. If we're an empath, or we just feelers, we feel the pain, what's going on in the world. We feel the pain of others, we feel our own pain, and it gets magnified. So it's like finding new ways. And like I was saying about creativity and connection with others, finding a deep connection to ourselves, so then we can actually be so much stronger, and be authentic in how we feel and our expression. Like before my friend died, I had months of just bursting into tears in the morning, and just having this very deep, and I was like, well, no one's actually died yet, I mean, what is going on? But it was just like, oh grief has come up to express. And I need to listen, and I need to write. And that's one of the things that really helped me when I went through my spiritual awakening and was, when I was in a psychedelic, it was actually, I journaled every day. I journaled constantly. I journaled through panic. I journaled everything. I wrote everything down. And this is what my friend told me to do. And I ended up obviously writing my book, but that journaling, that's what I've been doing again. It's like this is coming through. There's something for me to write about grief. There's something for me to learn here. There's something for me to transform in a different way. I've been learning guitar, and I've been writing a song, and it's like, right, I can do this to honor my feelings, to express myself. Yes, obviously I can cry, and if it wants to come through, I need to express that, and I need to take that time, and be at home or more on my own. But yeah, it's like really finding different ways to embrace how we feel, to embrace the loss, and transform it into love, because they actually don't want us to be unhappy. People that they don't want us to be unhappy. They want us to be happy, and to be ourselves, and to find joy in life. They don't want us to be miserable and in pain and suffering and angry. Yes, all emotions are allowed, but it's just like, how can we navigate that, and trying to look at new ways of approaching it. And that's what, before he died, I had time, because I was feeling this. It's like, oh, okay, I need to express, I need to journal about it, I need to write, I need to write a song. Came through. I need to play guitar. I'm going to learn to play guitar in honor. 10 minutes a day, learning a few chords. You don't have to be brilliant, but it's just like using creativity and sound. Sound's been very important to me in my sort of rebalancing, and just exploring new things. Exploring sound, the gong, crystal bowls. Exploring the voice, expressing. And for women, I think that's really important to. We need to talk. We need to express ourselves, and we need that space, safe space to do that.
Yeah. Totally. I've actually just recorded a program, an online course that's really exactly that, like how we can use our own voices to bring us into deeper connection with ourselves, and to express all the different layers, like whatever there is emotionally in the moment, or also tapping into stored, repressed emotions and traumas, and giving space, holding space for ourselves to express that, to give sound to it, to give voice to it. And through that, the energy gets to flow. Right.
And we get joy and happiness from connecting to ourselves and singing with others.
Exactly. And then we're alchemizing.
Yeah. And then we find that we channel a song, or we just connect and be happy, be happier, or have moments of, bliss and joy and personal expression, which it's expansive. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
many times I was writing a song.
Sorry,
I'd been writing a song, I'll say quickly. I was writing a song, and through the pain, through the tears, crying on the guitar, and at the end of it, I've transmuted all that emotion through the act of making the song. And at the end, I have a song. And then I've processed it. I've come to this point of joy at the end of feeling all the grief. And I have a song. It's like, wow, not only have I alchemized that, but I've like created something from it as well. And that feels great.
Exactly. And that's what I realized with the song for me. It's like, I'm honoring myself and my expression.
I think the internet.
And then on the other side, I'm actually, creating something that makes me feel joyful, playing it over and over again, So maybe you'd like to say a little bit about, what you offer in your retreats, and how people can come to Brazil, and I think you said Costa Rica, and the Netherlands soon, so in Europe, to share with us.
Yeah, so I offer ayahuasca retreats here in Brazil in the rainforest, normally week-long, deep dive retreats here in the middle of the jungle, off-grid, mountainside, rivers, full immersion in wild, pristine rainforest, like no pollution of any kind whatsoever. It's just us and nature. So it's a real beautiful opportunity to connect to outer nature, wild, pristine outer nature, and also to connect to your own deep inner nature with the support of ayahuasca. And in Costa Rica, I offer tantrahuasca. That's a retreat currently for women only. Hopefully at some point it will be for men as well. that's combining Tantra with Ayahuasca. And so this has some of the deep dive ceremonies of Ayahuasca, and then it's also more exploring different tools that are already available for each one of us, specifically breath, sound, movement, visualization, working with our own energy, learning tools and practices to really learn how to bring that what we've been talking about, presence, holding space for yourself, and learning how to tap into your own life force energy and how to cultivate that energy as a tool for healing, for transmuting emotions, for opening the heart, for reaching expanded states of consciousness. So like the ayahuasca helps give us a little boost, and also knowing that we have so many tools available to us just with our own body, our own being. So we explore a lot more in that retreat, these kind of different tools. And then I will be starting soon psilocybin retreats in the Netherlands, in Holland. And yeah, there'll be probably generally more 2-3 day workshops. And then I'll probably soon later this year be offering a music and medicine retreat. So this is very much, it's a lot about connecting into who you are and expressing that through your voice, through your creativity, through your moving body, through your sound, through making music together, improvising. It's you don't have to be a musician or anything, have any musical training. It's more specifically about you connecting into you and giving voice to that and using your own voice as a tool to create this kind of transformation that we're talking about really here, transmuting emotions, coming into deeper connection with yourself. And that will also be with ayahuasca, so you can also have that possibility to explore that with the medicine, and maybe with psilocybin in the Netherlands, a similar kind of retreat. And then I have online programs. So I have Awaken Your Sexual Medicine that's specifically for women. That's about cultivating, channeling your own energy as a path to empowerment, expanded states of consciousness, coming deeper at home into your sovereignty, into your empowerment, into your own love, self-love, freeing yourself of shame of your body, freeing yourself of shame of your sexuality, and really cultivating that self-love. And from there, love to the world and to others. And Awaken Your Vocal Medicine is coming soon. That's again, as I've been sharing about expressing yourself, connecting into who you are through your voice and giving voice to that expression. So yeah, there's various in-person retreats, Brazil, Costa Rica, the Netherlands, sometimes possibly America. And then online, these different programs. And then I guide people, mentor, coach one-to-one as well, sometimes online.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great. And what's your website again? Do you remind everyone what your website is?
awakenyourmedicine.com.
Fantastic. Okay, well, it's really wonderful to meet you, really. I've really enjoyed it. We could probably talk for hours, actually. We'll probably have to talk again. But thank you for coming on. And yeah, I really enjoyed talking to you today. And yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. It's also really very much enjoyed this conversation. And yeah, feel we as a culture need to be talking about these kind of things more.
We do, because we need to make the change. You know, change is for us to make, you know, together, you know, we need to make the change so we can live different lives. We need to live different lives now. Time is now. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I'd love to come on your retreat one time in the future.
Oh, I'd get to welcome you.
But anyway, sending lots of love from Bali, and yeah, I hope to meet you in person sometime.
Yes. Thank you so much, Alice.
Take care. Bye. Thank you for listening to I'm Alice podcast. And if you'd like to like and subscribe my channel, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.